Hi, this is Professor Nugent, and welcome to Lecture 5, Chapter 5, Motivation Theories. So that's a very motivated team here. I'd like to work with them. They seem like they really enjoy their job and they have some really love for what they do. Right? Okay. So, what is motivation? And so this chapter is all about understanding the basics of motivation and then, you know, how can we utilize motivation to not only for our own personal needs, but also for the needs of anyone who's in a leadership position to motivate other employees to work better. We're going to talk about a theories of motivation uh, and the insights to the expectancy theory of motivation, all included in this chapter, and also goal setting. Okay, so now everybody has a basic understanding of motivation, and it's really something within you that propels you forward, that keeps you focused, that um, keeps you heading towards that goal, or something that an internal feeling or force that drives you to achieve. It's kind of how I see it. So it's directly related to your persistence, perseverance. Now, when we talk direction, it's where you channel or focus your motivation. So direction is just really how do you apply and focus your motivation. Level of motivation is, basically if you could measure it, how much effort someone puts into whatever they're trying to achieve. Persistence is the length of time someone sticks with it. There are some of the most fun and best careers to have definitely take a lot of perseverance. Some careers may take extra education. Some careers may just be very difficult to get involved in, maybe something as acting, and you have to really persevere through many rejections before you succeed. So these are, basic concepts we all understand. Okay. So let's talk about some types of motivation theories that are out there. And one theory I want to talk about is the content theory. Now, the content theory of motivation focuses primarily on individual needs. Psychological is sort of where this begins and ends. What do we feel that we want to increase in our life or decrease in our life? So what do we want more of? What do we want less of? This is going to motivate us to increase or decrease. So the content theory tries to explain work behavior based on pathways to meet satisfactions on your needs. And a lot of this is dealt with in a hierarchy of needs. So we're familiar with that. We're going to go over Maslow's in a minute. So that's one idea. Now there's also process theories. And process theories of motivation focus on how cognitive processes as thoughts and decisions within the mind of people influence their behavior. So whereas content approach may identify job security as an important individual need, a process approach would probe further, identify why the decision to seek job security results in certain job behaviors. So it's a little bit deeper of a concept, really going beyond just the basic needs and really what happened in your life that is creating this real need and motivation. Now we're also going to discuss, some process theories could be broken down into equity theory, expectancy theory, and goal-seeking theory. So, you could think about in the process theory, you may have someone who grew up poor and their motivation is to be rich, and they they're very motivated to seek ways of gaining wealth based on that. That would be an example of a process. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so Maslow's hierarchy of need. Now, you must have encountered this hierarchy somewhere in your education. It's very common. If not, don't be upset. I'm going to go over the basics here. And there's basically five levels of what humans need. Um, and some are more important than others, but basically follows a flow of certain needs need to be satisfied first before you can worry about other needs. For example, if you're starving or you're thirsty or dying of thirst, you're not going to worry about your job review, your promotion, award you're up for next week. You're worried about where am I going to get a glass of water in the next 5 hours before I die. So it's sort of along those lines. Now here is the actual hierarchy chart, and you'll see down at the bottom the lower needs, the psychological, most basic needs here, and we're talking food, water, substance. And then if you get your food, your water, and your substances, the next thing you're going to want is safety. So you want security, protection, a nice cave. If we're talking long ago, and this is your day-to-day life. Maybe you want to belong to part of a group for protection. Okay, then that's going to evolve into social. So after safety is met, then you're going to start looking for love and affection and belonging and relationships to other people. So once these lower needs are met and you have your social network and you feel safe and you have your basic needs, then you start looking for esteem. You want to respect, prestige, recognition from your peers, from other people. You want to feel that you're good at what you do. And then self-actualization is the highest need, and it's a need to grow and expand your abilities and be the best you can be. So these are what drives people. So, think about this in your life, and, I'm sure your social, safety, and psychological needs are met, but how are you working on fulfilling your esteem and self-actualization needs? What can you do in your life to feel better about yourself that will make your self-esteem increase? Okay. So what we can learn from these theories, here's another theory of motivation. We have existence, desires for your psychological and material well-being. So this is more physical, where you are right now, and you want to be well situated. There's also desire for growth. Everybody wants to evolve in their own way, and as you're growing, you may want to grow and develop a family and have children. You may want to grow and develop your career, your business, and then also relatedness. You desires for interpersonal relationships. You want friends, family. So all three of these needs, people need to focus on. And some people, gravitate to one of these spheres more often than the others, and sometimes neglecting some of the others. And we sometimes know someone who has a hard time and doesn't have many friends or interpersonal relationships, and you can see their life is sort of unbalanced. And then you may know people who the growth is stagnated. Maybe your growth was stagnated, and that's why you're in the MBA program, to kind of kickstart your opportunities and enhance your growth. So these are all things, behind the scenes, pushing us, driving us, our motivation, and getting us to do what is best for us. Okay, so just look at this slide for a minute. I want you to look at these two pictures and think about what they're saying and what they make you feel. Okay, so if you look at these two pictures and you make up a story of what do you think is happening when you look at these two pictures. Now, the TAT, the idea is if you go through this, it's actually a series of 31 pictures, and then you see these pictures and you create a story and you tell a story, that what you project and what you say in your story to go along with these pictures is a tool that psychologists can use to uncover your needs, or what in your life you need or you're missing, or what what you're focusing on. And sort of your unconscious needs are going to be activated by these pictures in the story you tell. And people have very different stories they tell when they look at these series of 31 pictures. So you could look up more information about this on the web. It's just a technique to get to for people to understand, doctors especially, their patients' motivational influences. Kind of an interesting side subject here. Let's get back to the chapter. Okay. So let's talk more about theories of motivation. Okay, acquired needs theory, need for achievement. So we've all felt this. We want to achieve. We want to be somebody. We want to do something better. So we like to solve problems and puzzles. We like to let people know our achievements or be the one with the right answer. So that's part of this acquired needs theory. You acquire this need for achievement that you learn as you grow through society and things of that nature. Now that TAT slide I was just explaining, part of those slides is supposed to help doctors to put you in one of these need categories: achievement, affiliation, and power, and get to helps to focus in on those three specifically. Now, the need for affiliation is the desire to establish and maintain, of course, relationships with other people, and the need for power is more influenced in control and influence and the ability to be responsible or in charge of or influencing other people. So all three of these sub needs are all tied into motivation. So this is what motivates you: your need to achieve, your need to make friends, and affiliation, your need for power. And everybody has a different mix of these three. Some people could be more focused on one, some on all three equally, and so it's sort of that's what the TAT test is, really to understand what is your mix of these three needs in this theory. Now, each need is linked to different, psychological makeups and backgrounds. Now, in the workplace, it's important to understand what motivates people and what you can use to help motivate people. And it's clear that any workplace is going to need to have an environment where affiliations and networking can be created within the company, not just for a cross-functional task force, but just the overall well-being of the people in the company. People need that. That's why you may feel that in an online class you don't really have the affiliation that you may have had in the classroom, or if you're working from home, it's not the same as being in a work environment. And there's a lot to be said for the affiliation that creates. The need for achievement: companies need to set a growth path for individuals where they can achieve and be promoted. Otherwise, they lose interest, they lose their motivation. And also a need for power, the ability to extend power to your employees as they get promoted and move through different levels. Okay, so let's move on here, and let's talk about the two-factor theory. So now, Hertzberg is the one that developed this in a study of individual needs and motivation. So he began by asking workers to report the times they felt exceptionally good about their jobs and the times they felt exceptionally bad about their jobs. Results show that people talked about very different things when they were reporting feeling good or bad about their jobs. So Hertzberg explained these results in what he called the two-factor theory, also known as the motivator hygiene theory. So this theory identifies motivator factors are motivating factors as primary causes for job satisfaction, such as the and hygiene factors as a primary cause of job dissatisfaction. Now, okay, so let's talk about hygiene factors. Now, this is what can make you not like a job. That is, they relate more to the setting in which people work than the nature of the work itself. The two-factor theory suggests that job dissatisfaction occurs when hygiene is poor. Not personal hygiene, like people smell bad at your work, but hygiene in an overall sense. But it also suggests that improving the hygiene factors will not increase job satisfaction. It will only decrease job dissatisfaction. So, you might hate your job less if the hygiene factors improve. So if you want some examples of some hygiene factors, let me just see where I am going here with these slides. I'm going to give you some examples here. Organizational policies, and that's a big influence in organizational behavior. Do you feel if you don't like your company's policies or the way they do things, that's going to make you unhappy at work. The quality of supervision. You may love the work you're doing, but if your supervisor is an ass, it's not going to be a fun environment. But if your supervisor becomes less of an ass, your work environment, you'll be less unsatisfied with your work, I guess, so to speak. Your working conditions. Do you work in a sweatshop, or do you work in, say, a company like Google, where it's the conditions are really wonderful, so wonderful you can even bring your dog to work? Your relationship with coworkers. If you ever worked in a company environment where one of your coworkers was really a terrible person that you couldn't stand, that kind of just ruined your day, just the sight of them. Okay. And also your wage could be a factor too. And I don't believe that getting paid more money makes you like your job more. Getting paid more money is nice and good, and when you get that raise, it may feel good for a couple of days. But if you hate your job, you're gonna hate your job. If you hate the work you're doing, I should say, no amount of money is gonna make you like the work you're doing. You may not agree with that, but I found that money wasn't the solution. When I worked as an accountant, I was making decent money, not to brag, but I didn't like it. I didn't like working in accounting. I didn't like sitting in a desk and looking at spreadsheets and organizing entries and setting up audits. And I kept getting promoted and getting paid more. And I kept telling them, I'm not a good accountant. Stop, why do I keep getting promoted? Of course, I didn't tell them that. I kept thinking that, though. And then eventually I just was never satisfied with this job. It wasn't right for me. I did it because I thought, the money was good and it would be an easy, job to do well at. But I had to switch careers into finance, which is the element of accounting I did like, but finance is what I really liked. Accounting was just a confusing phase for me. So just an example from my history. Okay, so let's move on to motivator factors. And these could be things like achievement, recognition, the work itself, responsibility, the advancement potentials, growth potentials. Now, so these are sources directly related to the job itself. It's part of the content, what people actually do in their work, and they include, I think achievement and opportunity for growth are really important, as well as recognition of what you do, what you're doing, and according to the two-factor theory. The presence or absence of satisfiers or motivators in people's jobs is the key to satisfaction, motivation, and performance. So when motivator factors are minimal, low job satisfaction decreases motivation and performance. Of course, if you're working in a job where you can't get a raise, you're never recognized, there's no achievement or advancement. I mean, you may like the work, but sometimes that's just not enough. You're not gonna feel completely fulfilled. Now, a very key point to remember about this two-factor theory is that job satisfaction and job dissatisfaction are separate dimensions. So the hygiene factors really relate to the level and tied to your job dissatisfaction, where the motivators are tied more to your job satisfaction. So even if the hygiene factors improve, you start to love your boss and your coworkers, or you get a raise, or the working conditions get better. This will not make people feel satisfied or more motivated in their work. And I can say that at first hand, where when I moved up from accounting clerk to junior accountant to senior accountant to accounting manager, of course the pay got better, and I got an office, and my working conditions got better, and I went to different companies that were better companies, but still I was never satisfied with the work. All that never really meant anything more than the day it occurred. All right. You might feel like that on your at your job currently, and maybe you're in the MBA program to seek out a new career. And these are just basically the factors I was talking about in a nice chart. Okay, let's talk about equity theory. Now this has to do with how fair a situation is. Do you feel like your company treats all their employees fairly? And this can start all the way from siblings, when your children to the parent. Do the parents treat your siblings differently than you, and you feel like they don't, and it's a real source of dissatisfaction for you. And these sort of feelings naturally get transferred to the workplace. So future motivation depends on, how equitable you feel the rewards and the treatment are in the workplace. So it's sort of a social comparison. It's comparing and contrasting your situation to other situations in the workplace. Think about class. When you receive a grade, do you quickly try and find out what the others received in class as well? So if you received a B as your grade, and you might be upset at that, and then you find out that everybody else got a C or an F, you may feel pretty good. Or maybe you received an A, and you find out that everybody, even people who didn't put in half as much work as you, received an A. That may make you mad. So there's a situation where the equity factors into how satisfied you are with your grade. But the only way you can do that is compare it to others. So it kind of predicts your behavior upon receiving the grade. Working less or harder in the course, if you got a grade and you feel that you didn't do well as some of your coworkers, and then you go to the teacher and explain what you did wrong, maybe this will motivate you to work harder. I should say your classmates, not your coworkers, to do better. And this, so not too terrible of a concept to understand. Okay. All right, so let's look at this slide for a minute. And, we have individual outcomes, individual efforts, and then we compare them to others' outcomes and others' efforts. So this perceived inequality occurs when someone believes that he or she has been under-rewarded or over-rewarded for work contributions in comparison to other people. So this is the basic. If these two sides of the equation are equal, then everything is equitable. Once they become unbalanced, your individual efforts compared to others' efforts and the outcomes of those, then that's when the perceived inequity can occur. Okay, so now if you feel like you haven't received, just to go back for a second, if you could feel negatively about the inequity or positive. So, of course, you're going to feel negative when you're receiving less than others, but you're going to feel more positive when you're getting more than others, such as a raise. Okay, now let's talk about what happens if you if you if you really don't feel that things are fair. You may reduce your work that you're going to do. You may feel unmotivated. You're not going to work as hard. You're going to try and change the outcomes received, doing different things to try and change the results. You may leave the situation, quit the job, change comparison points and say, okay, let me not compare it to him. Let me compare it more to these people who are my peers and not look at people in another department. You may psychologically distort things and rationalize the inequity away. Oh, well, you know, he's been working here longer, or she is just, must be sleeping with the boss, or he is sleeping with the boss, and that's why they got favored. So it's nothing personal, or that must be a relative of the owner, things like that aren't necessarily true, but you distort it so you feel better about it. So these are just different things that will come up here. Now, okay, so let's think about your experiences. Say you're someone that comes in early and stays late and you work longer hours than everybody else in your department, and maybe you actually do in real life. But yet, at the end of the year, when the bonuses and reviews come, you feel that you're not being recognized or rewarded for all this extra effort you put in. So according to the equity theory, you will most likely, which one of these, read these four answers and think which one you will most likely. Okay, hopefully we would say four, but I think a lot of us, including me, would be like, okay, screw it. If I'm not going to get recognized for these extra hours, I'm going to decrease my hours and just, you know, work 9 to 5. Is that the right response to this? Now we all know, here's a little secret. After raises and bonuses are given, going back to ask for a change or a raise or bonus is not going to work, because that's going to embarrass your boss to have to go to his boss to change the initial raise or bonus you got. So that's never something that's going to occur easily. The odds are greatly stacked against you. Now, what would I do personally in this situation? I would go to my boss and say, okay, listen, I've been working a lot of extra hours, and obviously I wasn't compensated for that. So what do I need to do? What do you want for me to do, or how would you like me to perform that would put me in a category that I would be more well rewarded? So sort of more communication and dialogue with your boss to try to figure that out. Okay. All right. So organizational justice. So this is really how you're looking at more of the practices and policies of the workplace. How fair are they? And this is respect to the equity theory. So involved in this would be procedural justice. The company has certain policies and procedures. Are they adequately and properly followed and maintained? Is it the same for everybody, or do different people get different outcomes? Now, disruptive justice. Now, this is looking at how, if you could measure it in some sort of way, people are treated under the same policy. Now, if you see any difference in the treatment of people because of race, ethnicity, gender, age, or some other demographic category, there could be a perceived injustice. A lot of times, this could be involved in a sexual harassment case or salary dispute, things of that nature. interracial injustice, which is sort of basically more of what we're talking about, but more in a racial focus. Cumulative justice, a degree at which transactions among parties are considered free and fair, in your workplace. And that might tie to the discussion question we had a few weeks ago about Facebook. Okay. All right. So here is a little formula that if we want to say that M equals E times I times V. So motivation, that's what the M stands for, equals expectancy times instrumentality times valence. So this is part of Victor Voom expectancy theory. And it suggests that motivation is a result of rational calculation. People will do what they can do when they want to do it. So you have this expectancy is the probability assigned by an individual that work effort will be followed by a given level of achievement or achieved task performance. Expectancy would be 0 if the person felt it were impossible to achieve the given performance level. And it would be equal to 1 if the person was 100% sure the performance could be achieved. Instrumentality is the probability assigned by the individual that a given level of achieved task performance will lead to various work outcomes. So again, this is a 0 to 1 scale, and okay. No, the valence is the value attached to the individual to various work outcomes in a scale of -1, very undesirable, to +1, very desirable. So if you could actually rate a situation with these numbers, multiply it in the formula, you get a result. And the results, I'm not 100% sure of the scale, but I would assume a positive number would be a highly motivating number, and a negative number would be a negatively motivating number. So I mean, if we want to go over this again, I should advance the slide, but if we talk about these three factors again, the expectancy effort will yield acceptable performance. So instrumentality, performance will be rewarded, and valence, the value of the rewards, are highly positive. So these are the three factors we're talking about. So expectancy, select, say you had some sort of goal. So you may want to select capable workers, train them, support them, set clear goals. Instrumentality, clarify possible rewards for good performance, give performance rewards as they achieve goals, and then valence, identify needs and match rewards to high value needs. So sort of a pathway to success for employee. So this is actually the theory in a flow chart, and you can see people exert work effort, and they do that to achieve a task, to complete a task, and then they get a work-related outcome. And offshoots of these are the three topics that we're talking about. It's sort of how his theory works. Okay. So what is some implications of these these motivational theories and expectancy theories? Okay, so motivation, of course, is sharply reduced when these three factors get closer to zero or become negative. And motivation is high with these when these three factors are more positive. So the more positive result you get, of course, on the scale, the higher the number, the more motivated someone would be. So if you wanted to sort of mathematically try to measure it, the problem with these theories is achieving the number for each of them. And how do you know that number is accurate? Or, that's the problem. The math can't, I don't think math can solve a lot of problems. Most problems math can solve, but motivational theory, I don't think math is the best solution for it. But it's a theory, and we need to kind of look at it. Okay, so goal-seeking theory. Here's a process of, developing a pathway or targets or objectives that a person is gonna have to do in the workplace. So I think we're all familiar with goal setting. It's really just saying setting a goal for yourself, but more formally laying it out, the steps, the different levels until you actually achieve it. So it's a process really. In the workplace, it's a process of a little bit more documenting the steps to success. Okay, so now here's some of the theory. If it's a difficult goal, it's gonna lead people to higher performance. So think of like setting a bar that you're trying to jump over. If it's a very high bar, you may not jump over it, but it's gonna lead you to a higher performance, a higher jump than a bar that's set much lower. So if you have a specific goal for somebody, something that's well understood and something specifically measurable, like lose 10 pounds, that will lead to a higher performance and more of a vague or general, goal, like, okay, lose weight. So those are two outcomes of this theory. When you set a goal, you're more easily able to achieve it if you have an understanding of what it is, more specifically what you're trying to achieve. And difficult goals get better results, or people achieve more when the goals are difficult. Now, if the goal is too difficult, they may just give up, and that's the danger of setting a goal too high. They may just deem it unachievable. Now, feedback, of course, task feedback along the way can also have greater achievement or keep people on target for the motivation. So when someone's doing something, you say, "Oh, good, keep doing it. You're getting there." And especially think of a personal trainer in a gym working you out. You can definitely achieve more, especially with more constant feedback. All right. Now, if you have that feeling of self-efficacy where you feel like you can achieve it, that you have the abilities to, that's going to lead to higher performance. So this is sort of related to confidence. It's more like knowing your abilities and your experience with your abilities in the past. If you have a good feeling of this, you will be able to accomplish more. And sometimes life is about getting to the point where you're ready to attack certain goals, because you need the self-efficacy to really believe in yourself to win. Now, and of course, any type of goal that you're looking to achieve, if it's something that's personally connected to you or you believe or accept in, you have a commitment to it, you're going to be more likely to make it. And I mean, that's pretty much common sense. All right, so let's talk a little bit more business oriented here. We're getting so psychological in this chapter. what is MBO, management by objectives? And just like the slide says, a process of joint goal seeking between a supervisor and a subordinate. So pretty much common sense. If you are the supervisor, you want to motivate your employee by setting a clear stream of objectives. It's essentially a process of joint goal seeking between managers and those who report to them. In a team setting, for example, the leader works with the team members to set performance goals consistent with higher level organizational objectives. If this is done properly throughout a company, this can help clarify the hierarchy of needs and a series of well-defined documentation and things of that nature. What is the company trying to achieve, and what do you need to achieve, and trying to help everybody work together to the betterment of the company. All right, so let's look at this slide. Team leader, team member. So in order to, part of this process or an example of this process is, jointly established performance goals. So team members participate in the goals with the team leader. So the individual acts of the team members need to be monitored, encouraged, and coached by the team leaders, and then they jointly evaluate the results, and then the process continues. So this is just the very basic overlay that you would put within the objectives of whatever needs to get done. This is common sense that we if you have any managerial experience, that that this just happens. If you're a good manager, you know how to manage by objectives, and you know how to lay it out for your employees and give them the tools they need to succeed. So that the measurement of a good manager, in my idea, is not so much what he accomplishes, but what his team or subordinates accomplish. So a good manager doesn't really need to do anything other than motivate his workers, his subordinates, to be the best they can be. So I don't really agree with, in certain roles, I remember in a lot of companies, they started laying people off, and the manager had to do one whole separate job in addition to managing other people. And I feel, for some managers, they have enough people to manage that their sole focus should be on managing those people and getting the best work performance out of them, and they shouldn't have an additional job on top of that. But in today's highly efficient work environment, most managers have to not only manage a staff of people, but also perform an entire job of their own at the same time. Okay, so that's the end of this chapter. It gave us a lot of good things to think about, and I would like you just to reflect for a minute on what motivates you in your life, in your and how you pursue what's been driving you through your career and your life, and what really motivates you. And we're going to have some really interesting discussion questions on this, so you can look forward to that this week. Okay, so that wraps up chapter 5, and we're going to be moving into this week chapter 6, which is more motivation, but more tying it more closely to performance. So I look forward to talking to you then, and keep up the good work.